Oh my God. Dude, that feels so good.
But you guys can see the difference from first to second. This thing is shifting into.
And this is hands down my favorite mod I've done to this car, or maybe any car possibly.
I actually like it. First, neutral, second, neutral third, neutral fourth, and then fifth, and then the C reverse. Yes.
There you go.
Dude, it feels good, right? It's like,
I would highly recommend getting this shifter.
So it's finally here, the much requested Garagistic shifter guide. A lot of you guys have been asking about this on all the social media, messaging us, texting us, emailing us. What do I do with this, this, and this? Today, we're gonna get into all that and more, the history of these shifters, the evolution, and answer all the most common questions. So let's get into it. So here we have a BMW transmission, but for the most part, this is a very good way for us to explain kind of how the stock system works and what possible play points could be in the system, what's consumable. You kind of need to understand this stuff in order to then upgrade it. Once we've kind of explained everything about how the BMW system works, we'll get into our individual shifters and how it plays a role into this system now. All right, so basically this system, no matter what, there's a couple of points of contact that are soft. Usually the front of your carrier right here is going to be held on by a rubber bushing. The rear will also be held by some sort of rubber bushing, and the rubber bushings in your transmission. So they're all going to be around the same durometer, and that's how this whole system kind of floats. But by doing that, it does add a ton of play. So the front is where we're going to start first, and it's how this arm is actually attached to the transmission. Usually the front of the bushing will kind of look like a rubber version of this. But depending on the year of your car, they might be round, they might be oval, there'll be different shapes. You can look on our website and there's a shifter kit for your car on there. That is the part that will end up going in the front right here, kind of where this bolt is. And by doing that, it kind of eliminates the play back and forth. And overall, just stabilize the system so that all the other parts can play a role in that clip. Now, it's called a clip because it's to take off. But how it works is there's usually a hole right there, and this kind of clip just kind of sits over like that. There can be really hard to take off, but you can try to get a pick or a 9-degree pick. Harbor Freight, some kind of store like that, usually have cheap tools for that kind of job. But quick tip though, we're using a bolt here. You can too. It makes it easier to service in the future, so you don't have to ever deal with this thing again. So that's basically the front carrier information. The next thing to play a role in the play in this assembly is going to be the rear bushing. So usually the factory one would be rubber. In our case, it's polyurethane, which will last the lifetime of your car. Now with those two things, the last thing is the shifter cup. Now obviously this setup is modified with all of our components already. So this is basically the Supreme shifter, but yours would look something like this. So this is where the cup would fit on this ball right here, and it kind of lives right over here. So that is another common place that there's going to be play inherently. It's just going to be basically the front shifter bushing, rear shifter bushing, and the cup. What a lot of people don't realize too is there's actually another part of the system that adds a considerable amount of play, and that is the stock shifter. So these are made for comfort. They're not made to be, super stiff. Something for daily driver where it's just easy to put it into gear. That was BMW's intention with that. Right off the bat, they fill this with rubber, and there's play right there, and side to side. So that's primarily most of the top assembly, if you will. On our solid shifter options, this is completely eliminated. But no matter what, this component, no matter what shifter, whatever it may be, if you have a shift rod in your car, there's going to be a DSSR or selector rod connecting it to the transmission. That's what this would be right here. Yours would look something like that.
Embarrassing!
And what you're going to notice is that it's only held on by one point, and because of that, it's going to have inherent play no matter what you do. Just to put it in super simple terms, it's held on by 2 points, means less side-to-side play, and this is by far just the most bang for buck. Now obviously all these things work together and they complement each other.
Son of a...
But definitely don't forget your DSSR. This is good even if you're rebuilding your stock shift, you still want it to be comfortable, you can keep everything on there and just have this and it won't affect any of the uncomfort or noise in the car at all. Another solution that we do offer for DSSR customers, your chassis just might not be a popular chassis.
I call it Experiment 626.
Or there might not be a DSSR available in your model. So for that, we actually have a weld it yourself kit. This thing is actually the coolest thing ever because you get supplied with a rod, they're both stainless, and you're able to measure and cut to your length, twist, whatever it may be. If you're doing motor swaps, this is like the coolest thing for motor swaps because it's just like Legos for adults.
How do you do, fellow kids?
And you can just basically put this and bend it exactly how you want it. But by far the coolest feature on this is the fact that one side is a 10mm hole and the other side's threaded, which means that you can use a shoulder bolt, and we provide that. So that's a super cool upgrade. Instead of using pins that have play, it's a shoulder bolt that pinches on the bearings. So just weld it yourself. I got a welder, I can weld. Now, the DSSR connects to the selector joint, and that's right here. Again, this is our equivalent, but the factory unit may look something like that. Now, the problem with these is that they wear out very quickly. There's actually a piece of foam in there, and it wears out over time. So this is one of those things usually too, people don't know how to take it off, and so they just kind of neglect it. This can undo a lot of what you're doing with the upgrades. So just, you're in there, you should just get it done. And it's very simple. There's a 10mm pin right there and a ring that goes on top. So when it's on the transmission, it'll be something like that. You take an Allen key and you basically just push the pin out after you've taken the ring off. And then the whole thing just slides off the selector joint, off the actual transmission. Then depending on your car, that's when you upgrade to our selector joint. Some of our shifters come with them. But this is one of those things where we have bearings instead. The tolerance is tighter, the foam that's in there is tighter. It's just an upgrade. It's probably the last selector joint you'll ever need in your car. So, now a common issue when actually buying an aftermarket DSSR is that sometimes your particular rod may have been bent by the factory or just, for clearance for the transmission drive shaft stuff. A lot of aftermarket companies do it straight, and obviously it's for manufacturing purposes. If your selector joint needs to be relocated and it's now hitting for whatever reason, we do offer an offset selector joint that looks like that. And the idea is basically it just lifts the whole thing if you needed that additional clearance. Again, this is just a quick tip that sometimes aftermarket stuff and factory stuff just don't play well. If it's hitting on your car, just send us an email, and we usually have tips like this and other things to make sure that you don't run into issues on your install. That's kind of how the bottom half connects to the stock transmission assembly. Between all of those components, that's everything that you can do external of the transmission to help improve your shifting experience. All of these things add play, and any of those components could add up. So it's always good to just check it, whenever you're underneath the car. With the kits that we provide, these things will outlast your vehicles. I mean, they're made with materials that are considerably more durable than what came on your car. Now, the hardest thing to eliminate as far as play in the system is anything that will be internal to the transmission. That's detent pins, that's just the mileage of the transmission, the kind of use it has been experiencing.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Worn out transmissions, it's not magic, it's gonna be translated. Now, a lot of this stuff will help with that, especially our solid shifter assemblies that are actually hard mounted to the car. If your shifter leans or anything like that, it's probably because of that anyway. Again, we're gonna talk about it, but our self-centering shifter can heal that lean, but it's still not a solution. So at least you know the factory culprit of why that's happening before you start upgrading it. If you need help or need more information about how to do the detent job, there's actually a video in our YouTube channel on replacing those and everything else involved with that job. So be sure to click on the link and check out that video. Now that you know how a BMW stock shifter is supposed to work, let's introduce our shifters. So this is what your factory shifter may look like. This is what the Garagistic Supreme shifter looks like. Obviously, out of all the shifters, this is what resembles what came out of your car. It's the easiest to live with, but you will have to keep all of the top assembly and the DSSR. Some of the perks about this that will eliminate play is that it's not filled with rubber like the factory one, so it's not gonna have any of that play. Instead of having a plastic insert at the very bottom, it actually has a bronze insert, and it's a little bit more precise than that Delrin was. The coolest feature about this is the fact that you can adjust the throw however you like. So the ball is stationary on a factory shifter, but on ours, there's 2 set screws on each side, and you can adjust the actual pivot point higher or lower to get it to where you want to get the shortest throw or just a throw that's comfortable for you. And there's even more adjustment at the very bottom underneath the car to fine tune that throw. So major adjustment, minor adjustment, and you're good to go. You can run your factory shift knob on there. You know, we have our factory setup right there. This would keep your interior the most stock, eliminate a ton of play, especially if you do it with the shifter kit and the DSSR. It's by far my personal favorite, easiest to live with. It eliminates a ton of play, and it's just improving on a very good system as it is. All the shifters that we're now going to talk about are solid mounted, which will mean 2 things. It'll mean that you're going to eliminate this carrier assembly and all of the components that cause play in that. And the transmission has to be solid mounted to the car, either through 80A, 95 Delrin, or aluminum transmission bushings. You don't want your transmission moving differently than your shifter. That's how issues can be caused with shifting, not being able to get it in gear. You're gonna have to use any of the harder transmission bushings when you're using any of these shifters. So our entry-level solid shifter is gonna be our original. This thing is great because it's fully reversible. It fits the round hole shifter cars. That's E30s, E36, E46s, and basically you don't have to drill any holes. It sandwiches using that hole in your car. Fully reversible, and right off the bat, it eliminates all the play that we talked about earlier from your front carrier bushings, your shifter cup, and your rear, because it eliminates that whole system. And instead of your factory unit that has a little Delrin pivot point that can wear out, it has bronze, just like our Supreme does. So you can see the evolution. This is the next step from the Supreme. Again, you still have all the same perks from the shifter up, which means different types of shift rods, different shift knobs. It's all compatible. You can have an OEM setup, or you can have a short, medium, or long rod. So that's what's gonna be really cool no matter what on all of our shifters, is that modularity. So you don't have to buy another shift knob or shift rod if you like the one that's in your car. A lot of good reasons to go with the original shifter. After that, we have our stage 2 and our self-centering. Now, these 2 shifters have one thing in common: 3 slotted holes instead of the original circle. So a lot of the late model cars, E92s, E82s, the F series, the holes, you know, you're gonna see in your transmission tunnel, they're actually oval. That's why these shifters would be compatible with that. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't use it on the old circle cars like the E30, E36, and E46. You can, and you'll actually notice that these 3 holes will already be in some of those chassis. They'll either be a stamping, or depending if it was an automatic car, you might actually even have holes in there, so you don't have to drill anything either. That's a very common question. Being able to use these shifters on E46 and older vehicles, yes, you can. The stage 2 had some upgrades over the original shifter. Having those slots is also nice because you can actually move it back and forth. Depending on your selector joint, you know, you can actually move it forward and back with that slight adjustment. That slight adjustment can be found in the stage 2 and the Pro self-centering, but not in our original shifter. Another great feature that can be found on the stage 2 over the original is now, instead of a bronze bushing that's holding the selector rod, we now have bearings, 10mm precision bearings. The reason for using bearings instead of the bronze is longevity. These are just gonna last a little bit longer. Not to say those are gonna wear out quickly. Nice little upgrade. Again, you're seeing the progression of the shifters. Now, lastly is our Garagistic self-centering shifter. So these shifters are actually getting about a 20% lower throw every evolution. This is the latest thing out right now, and it incorporates a lot of the features found in our other chassis mounts, and obviously the very sought after self-centering function. It's pretty cool. There's a spring in there, and it actually just has tension left and right. And this basically makes it where even if you do have play, it's gonna pull it to the center This does band-aid a lot of the other issues, but if you do it properly and you still do the selector joint and the DSSR, you're gonna make sure that this system works really well for you. Some features that are unique to this that are not on the Stage or any of our other shifters, besides the self-centering function, is the fact that you can adjust lean. There's a set screw here, and on this set screw, if your shifter leans to one way or the other, you actually have the ability, you could just undo that and fine tune it. Now, when you install this in your car, the way to adjust this anyway is to actually loosen this and start running in your inline gears. I usually like to pick third, fourth. It's kind of in the middle. Basically have this loose, run it third and fourth, and then tighten it there. And that's gonna be kind of where your transmission is most comfortable. But again, depending on angle of your transmission and other issues, you might just have to fine tune that. Another feature that's unique to this is it has bearings, but it also has the ability to rotate. And in some cases, this helps with just the smooth engagement of the actual joint being able to rotate. The other ones won't do that. It's one of those things where it's just another improvement on this series of Garagistic solid shifters. So that's our whole solid shifter line. Now, no matter what, even if you don't end up running any of these and you just want to run shift knobs, you run a threaded adapter. Okay. You put it on your stock shifter and you can run all kinds of different combinations. So the item that is the most customizable, will change the look the most and feel of the shifter, is by far the shifter rod. So we basically offer a huge amount of combinations. You got your anodized finishes in black, you got silver, but you also have full carbon fiber units that are in ano and in bare. First, we'll start with the OEM ones. This is if you want to run your OEM shift knob. It basically has the BMW type notch and registering mark. So if you like your shift knob, whatever it may be, you can use it with that. They also come in small, medium, and large. And it's basically leverage no matter which shifter you have. So the shorter the rod means maximum effort and least amount of appearance of play. And longer rod will mean least amount of effort to put it in gear, but then it might magnify how much appeared play that your shifter might have. Next is shift knobs for customizing your shifter. So again, we have a large arrangement of shift knobs, and they're basically either gonna be aluminum or Delrin. The aluminum, obviously, if it's in the sun, you know what happens. Delrin will be a little bit more comfortable to live with on a day-to-day, and then depending on which shift knob, we then have options for recessed shift knobs. So possible options are Garagistic logo, 6-speed, 5-speed, and you guessed it, 4-speed. And installation is simple. There's just some tape on the back of it, double-sided tape, pops right in. And you basically would install that once you've actually installed your knob onto your rod, so that way you can center it. With all that said too, just keep in mind that this is gonna have a magnified effect on your shifter. So the longer the knob, it's just gonna magnify your effort on the rods. So keep that in mind when you're selecting the height of your shift knob. And again, those are compatible with OEM BMW shifters as well. They come with our adapters. You can see that on our website or our app as well. So there you have it. That's everything you need to know to pick the right Garagistic shifter for your application. If you have any questions, something that you want us to elaborate a little bit more on, leave a comment, message us, DM us, text us, anything, and we'll get you that information. Thanks for watching.